Recording started. What's up? My name is James McCool. I'm the owner of PaydirtDFS.com. Today we're going to be doing a quick hitter of the two-game main slate for the Monday games here, NFL Week 15, as well as some showdown analysis. I'm going to be doing these things just kind of in the same style that I would usually break down a showdown season, since I'm not going to be writing those articles. We're going to go over use of the contest sims as well as looking at the range of outcomes and the contest sims for the main slate. So if you have read my showdown season stuff before, a lot of this is going to look, pretty regular to you. If you have not, then this is kind of the way that I go through breaking down these slates. I have not looked at this two-gamer at all. I haven't looked at anything, so this is going to be a cold run. If you have any questions after I'm done with this and post it everywhere, then you can either comment on the video on YouTube or you can reach out on Twitter at Paydirt_DFS, and then you can also find me in the Discord over at Paydirt. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump in. So we're going to be talking about the main slate first. This model that we're looking at here is going to be the NFL range of outcomes. We also have a contest sims ran, as well as some contest sims ran and optimals ran for the showdowns, which we'll get to a little bit later. Side note, this converting names thing up here is hilarious, and I should fucking fix it, but I haven't. So it looks like, just from the get-go, Minnesota stacks are king for the two-gamer. This makes sense, when you sort by team total. They have the highest team total at 25.75. They also are one of the most condensed offenses, with Sam Darnold, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, and TJ Hawkinson getting the vast majority of the work. So high team total, skinny target tree, that's going to be the number one stack one way or another. All three of the Minnesota stacks actually are the top three overall medians, followed by just kind of a clusterfuck of other stacks. I'm actually surprised that only one Atlanta stack ends up being up here in the secondary spot. I would expect the team total of 24.75 for Atlanta stacks to end up being a little bit better in terms of medians, but is what it is. Chicago stacks show up there with Atlanta. You're basically getting the same expectation between both of those stacks. With Atlanta stacks, obviously, you have to pay more money. They're going to be more expensive. But with Chicago, you're going to get less ownership. Less people are going to be stacking Chicago than they are going to be stacking Atlanta. Big reason for that is because of this full 6-point difference in team total. You just get a higher expectation with Atlanta stacks. That being said, I am interested to see if that ownership holds up. I think that people fucking hate Kirk Cousins right now. Pretty negative sentiment on him. So I'd be willing to guess that he comes in really low owned. As we're looking at quarterbacks here, just quarterback expectations, Sam Darnold with the highest overall median, but him and Caleb Williams are right there next to each other. I wouldn't expect for him to end up being, that much more valuable. And what we see with the ownership, with Kirk Cousins being the highest owned, like I said, I think that people are lower on him than they should be. Like, he's in a good spot, and the team total is good, and he's free at 5,500. So maybe that ownership sticks. What I think ends up happening here is we probably see Cousins drop a bit in lieu of Sam Darnold, who I think comes in at about 20%, with Kirk Cousins coming in somewhere around, 30% or something like that. I think that closes up a little bit, but maybe it won't. Maybe we'll see a lot of Kirk Cousins. I'm not sure what we'll see. Current ownership projections, though, have Cousins as the highest overall projected in terms of ownership. Desmond Ridder is stepping in for Las Vegas. Desmond Ridder is not a good quarterback, so I don't have much reason to consider him. It would be one thing on a full slate, a $4,800 quarterback. It would be one thing, but the value just doesn't get you much. And the quarterbacks, their expectations are all relatively slim anyway. So I don't see a reason to go with Desmond Ridder outside of being unique, right? Like, I guess if you are going to, and we'll talk about wide receivers and stuff here in a second, but if you're going to stack Jacoby Myers with Brock Bowers, it's not the worst thing in the world to use Desmond Ridder at 4,800. And I think there will be a large subset of people who do that. Looking at running backs really quick, Ownership makes sense. It cascades with medians. There's really not anything to glean here. Bijan Robinson should end up being the highest owned running back on the slate. I think that Sincere McCormick will actually end up getting quite a bit more ownership than that at 5,100. The team has come out and said that they want to give him the majority of the work this week. So I think that they're probably going to end up shoving up his ownership quite a bit. I think he probably comes in at, I don't know, 25% owned, maybe 25, 26% owned. But I think the vast majority of people are just going to play the favorites. And that makes a lot of sense. For wide receivers, ownership mostly makes sense in cascades. We do see Keenan Allen at 41% owned projected. He looks like he's going to be probably the third or fourth highest owned wide receiver on the slate behind the main guys of Jefferson, London, Addison, and Keenan Allen being the fourth. I think that it is interesting that Darnell Mooney is only 23% owned. I have a lot of interest in that. I actually do have a lot of interest in Atlanta stacks overall. If what I think comes true and that Kirk Cousins does end up dropping in ownership and then Sam Darnold ends up rising, you would think that Darnold would end up rising here with Addison and Justin Jefferson both projecting for a lot of ownership. So it's going to make sense. The only reason why Darnold wouldn't be the highest owned quarterback on this slate is if you physically can't afford to fit him with Jefferson and Addison, but I find that hard to believe. So I'm going to think that when I rerun projections, we're going to see Kirk Cousins or Sam Darnold as the highest owned. And then for tight ends, we have TJ Hawkinson with the highest projected ownership, 45%. Yeah, I mean, Darnold he's got to come up in ownership. Brock Bowers looks at the lowest ownership here. How much ownership does Jacoby Myers look like he's getting? Only 31%. So yeah, I could definitely see going with a Las Vegas stack on this slate. It's a 2-gamer. You got to get a little bit weird, and it'll allow you to eat all the chalk around it. I think that's a pretty decent way to go about things. Looking at all of this, I think that the way that I'm probably going to consider, that's a lot of my face. Actually, fuck it. We can just jump into this. For this 2-gamer, I think that you kind of have two routes. You're either going to be going with a Minnesota stack and getting weird with the players around it, but that gets a little bit difficult. Like there's only so many routes that you can go if you get a Minnesota stack. Most people are going to be doing something like Sam Darnold with Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, bring it back with Keenan Allen. So I suppose you could, instead of doing Keenan Allen, do Rome Odunze, or you could do DJ Moore, but you start to get a little bit thin on that kind of stuff. You would have to end up fading, for one of the running backs. Maybe you do it with Sincere McCormick, who is less owned. There are ways to make Minnesota stacks work, but it's going to be the highest owned by a long shot. And I just don't think you should ever go with the highest owned on a 2-game slate. I prefer going with probably Chicago stacks. They have had their pass rate increased dramatically over the last couple of weeks. And while they looked bad last week, I do think that there is quite a bit of upside in that offense if they continue to pass heavily. And you can bring it back with Justin Jefferson, or you can play, like Aaron Jones and Justin Jefferson, and then bring it back against Chicago stack and just stack up that game environment. I think you can do that as well. But that's probably my lean. I prefer the Chicago side of that game. And then I do think that Desmond Ridder and Las Vegas stacks are completely in play. It would allow you to play both of the high favorite running backs and eat a lot of ownership around it without having to get different with your stack, right? So that's kind of the way that I look at the main slate. I'm not even sure that I'm going to play the main slate. It kind of depends on how the showdowns look. So before we move on to the showdowns, though, let's go ahead and take a look at the contest sims and see what they say for this 2-gamer. So overall, let's go ahead and look at QB exposures. They really like Caleb Williams. That's hilarious. I didn't even look at this until just now. So they really like Caleb Williams. That makes sense to me. For running backs, they don't like Aaron Jones. Okay, I'll buy that. They like DeAndre Swift and they like Bijan Robinson. Cool. Love that. Justin Jefferson vastly overowned. That makes sense. I think at 8,200 because he just is so expensive. And if you want to get all of like the good players around it, it makes sense to get in the mid-range because there's a lot of good mid-range plays at wide receiver this week. So contest sims, not a huge fan of Justin Jefferson. I would probably still end up eating Justin Jefferson if I was going to go with a Caleb Williams stack. Or you could bring it back to Jordan Addison, who is still negative, but not quite as negative. And then a tight end, just basically don't play TJ Hawkinson. The contest sims basically just say don't play Minnesota stack, and I think that makes sense. Let's go ahead and move on to the showdown. So the first showdown is going to be this Minnesota-Chicago game. Let's take a look at captain exposures. So it looks like the highest overall edge is on DeAndre Swift. Excuse me. With an 8% edge, exposure rate of 13.9, followed by Caleb Williams at 13.6 with a edge of plus 3.81%. The largest negative edge, which you can't see because of the overlay that I have here, is for Justin Jefferson. I can make this a little bit better. There we go. Okay, that'll work. We'll just go with this one for now. Is Justin Jefferson at -7% and Aaron Jones at -5%. So, more of the same. Contest sims don't like taking that Minnesota side either. They prefer the Chicago side. Looking at flexes, the highest overall edge is Sam Darnold with Caleb Williams and DeAndre Swift, all a 10+% edge with exposure rates of 61%, 52%, and 42%. Negative edges here, DJ Moore, Minnesota Vikings, and TJ Hawkinson. Super interesting that Minnesota Vikings are a very, very negative edge. So what contest sims are saying here is that they want a competitive game between Minnesota and Chicago, hence Minnesota not being a good defense to use, and they prefer to stack up the Chicago side. With DeAndre Swift and Caleb Williams both being valuable captains, I think that leads to you being able to do something like Caleb Williams with 2 wide receivers in the flex and bring it back with Justin Jefferson or Jordan Addison or Sam Darnold or something like that. I think you could also go with, Rome Odunze or any one of the wide receivers for Caleb Williams in the captain, and just build around a passing stack for Chicago. Let's go ahead and go over here and take a look at flex cores and dupe stuff. So 297 some ownership for this game, not really that high. I wouldn't expect all that many dupes tonight. Should be relatively normal, maybe a little bit below normal. And then the flex score, we don't even really have a flex score here. The highest exposure in terms of cash optimals is Aaron Jones at the flex, but only at 70%. We have Aaron Jones, Caleb Williams, Sam Darnold, DJ Moore, Justin Jefferson, and TJ Hawkinson, all over 50% exposure in cash optimals, with Keenan Allen at 47%. So this represents a little bit of an issue because when we see the projected ownership and the exposure rates kind of the same colors in lockstep, it means that people are going to be playing kind of like the same group of players. So we have to get different with the way that we use those players. One thing that we did see is that in the flex, TJ Hawkinson looks like a generally lame play. If you fade him, then I think you can kind of do what you would like to do. You could also get away from, maybe a DJ Moore or Justin Jefferson. Justin Jefferson is so expensive that there is a way for this game to be funneled away from him and have the mid-range players win the slate. Like, I think that what you're really doing is you're saying, do I want to play Sam Darnold or Justin Jefferson? And if you play Sam Darnold, then you can do that with Jordan Addison and TJ Hawkinson and fade Justin Jefferson, which I think is a really interesting way to go. Overall, contest seems pretty clear here. They prefer a Chicago lean. They think that this game is the best way to play it is to play it in a competitive manner and to play both sides the passing games. If I was playing one lineup, I would probably fade Justin Jefferson just because he's so expensive and just hope the mid-range guys get there. But again, not sure if I'm going to play that one or not. So let's go ahead and move over to the contest sims for Atlanta versus Las Vegas. So that's interesting. Oh, yeah. Okay. That makes more sense. So if we take a look at captain exposures, by far the best captain is Bijan Robinson. 41% exposure rate in the captain is fucking crazy. You should probably just play Bijan Robinson in the captain. If you don't, I guess you can punt. You can play a kicker in the captain, but just play Bijan Robinson in the captain. At the flex, the highest overall edge is Ray McLeod, followed by Young Hoku, and then Bijan Robinson. We do also have Kirk Cousins and Jacoby Myers, both as positive edges here with high exposure rates. When we look at negatives, the biggest negative is Brock Bowers. He's just really expensive. Desmond Ridder does not project well. There's not much confidence that Las Vegas is going to be able to be competitive here. So makes sense that Brock Bowers would be a heavy negative play, him and Desmond Ridder, and then Sincere McCormick, who should get some ownership. There's not really much to say about this one. Las Vegas with Desmond Ridder at QB is going to be hard to swallow. I do think that it makes sense on the 2-gamer. In the showdown, man, the numbers just hate it. I do think that you can probably make it work. Like if you want to play Desmond Ridder, if you go Bijan Robinson captain and then play Desmond Ridder with Jacoby Myers and Ray McCloud, right? And then you just stack up the Las Vegas side against Bijan Robinson and the captain. I think that works fine. From a dupe mitigation and flex score standpoint, flex score is going to be Drake London, Kirk Cousins, and Bijan Robinson. Those guys are going to be the ones that you find, that's the flex score. And then when you are looking at guys who are going to be mixed in, you'll see some Jacoby Myers and Desmond Ridder make it in there as the 4th man. And then you'll see Brock Bowers, Sincere McCormick, and Darnell Mooney being mixed in as 4th, 5th man. I think the industry is likely a little bit low on Darnell Mooney from what we saw in the main slate breakdown. But it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be super low on him in Showdown. I would say that if you are building this for a competitive game, he's the one that I would prefer to have over Drake London in the flex score, just because I think that his upside, they have similar upside in terms of raw fantasy production, but they get it in different ways. And Darnell Mooney should come in about half the ownership of Drake London. So this one, again, is simple, though. You're just starting with Bijan Robinson, the captain. You're playing like Desmond Ridder, Jacoby Myers, and Ray McCloud in the flex. And, bring in Young Ho Koo for a kicker and fill in the 5th spot with whoever. I think this showdown is considerably worse than the other one. I would much rather play the Chicago-Minnesota showdown, mostly because I think there are more interesting ways to go about it. Anyway, that has been a quick hitter for the 2-gamer. I didn't plan on writing for this slate. I just wanted to put out a quick video for it. So hopefully it was informative. I think that of the 3 options that we have, you're either going to be playing the Chicago-Minnesota or the 2-gamer, which I think boils down to playing the Chicago-Minnesota game. Something that you can do that's interesting on these 2-gamers is you can play the 2-gamer and put a focus on the Chicago-Minnesota game. And then for the showdown that you play, you can play the Atlanta-Las Vegas showdown and then kind of like get some natural hedging in that way. That way you kind of are able to split things up a little bit and find your exposures in ways that don't interact with each other. But me personally, I'm going to play the 2-gamer. I think that it makes a lot more sense, and I think we have a little bit of edge on Chicago and Las Vegas stacks, which allow us to play a lot of different things. So this has been a quick breakdown. My name is James McCool. I'm the owner of PaydirtDFS.com. If you have not gotten a subscription over to the site, then I think that you absolutely should do that. You can find a subscription over here. If you go to members and go to subscribe, and then scroll on down, you can see all the options. We have monthly, yearly, weekly, and daily passes. If you have not joined the Discord, then you absolutely should do that. Drop down. Discord is free to join. And if you don't want to do either one of those things, I appreciate you watching the video anyway. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit me up on Twitter, and I will talk to you guys later on.